pleasant nights, fellow travelers along the path of the beam. I am known on this level of the tower as Jaime in Fuego, and if it please you, join me here for a bit of palaver on Hail Stephen King. That's right, y'all. Welcome to the horror show. You can just call me Fuego for short, and yes, the Manitos. I am so very stoked to have y'all here discussing my favorite author, Shirley King, as you can see by the tower of books behind me there. And so with all of the big success that we have had from Mike Flanagan's very well received, and in my estimation at least, I know it wasn't for everybody, but in my opinion, rightfully so, it was one of the best horror things that I saw this entire year. That is his Netflix, The Haunting of Hill House. Yes, and on Hill House, anyway, you guys have no doubt seen it and have an opinion about it, but so with all of the notoriety that got and all the attention that got, it really got me to thinking, first and foremost, I'm going to read the Shirley Jackson novel at some point very soon. Beyond that, I wanted to revisit both the original black and white from, I think, the 60s, if I'm not mistaken. Then in the 90s, they tried redoing it. And late 90s, it was okay. So I was going to revisit both of those, but most notably, for fans in the Sai King camp, that's right, here all of us constant readers, you basically would have some interest, I would imagine, in the fact that King was trying to do a loose adaptation of that as a feature film for quite some time in like the late 90s. And so he initially pitched it to Spielberg. They were getting the gears turning and everything, but I guess the project initially fell apart because of the fact that Spielberg was like, no, we need more action, it needs to be more big and bombast and all this other stuff, and King was like, no, I want it to have more of a personal horror type aspect. And so yeah, Spielberg dropped off the project and it just never amounted to anything, at least in those late 90s years when it was initially pitched. But I guess King ended up reviving it and retaining the rights a few years later, and he tinkered a little bit more with the script and changed some backstory stuff up and brought in inspiration from the Winchester Mansion and the crazy history of that, which we saw very loosely documented in that movie this past year, which I actually pretty much enjoyed. And you can see our review of that here on the horror show. But yeah, so Winchester Mansion aspects and the fact that a house that had just constant building going 24 hours and just kooky, people living there and stuff like that. And, King devised this whole like massive history, and it ended up being a house of haunting that was constantly changing inside for this Rose Red idea, which is what it eventually came to be known as he continued to, just rework the script and try to make it of his own flavor and, give it its own, kind of spin and stuff like that. And so Rose Red is the name of the home where all of this takes place, and where he has this huge backstory of just all the way dating back to the initial construction of the property in the early 1900s, when this guy by the name of John Rimbauer, so he's marrying this chick half his age. It's like 1908, something like that. And anyway, the first decade of the 20th century. And he's in Seattle, and he's like this petroleum, like oil mogul of sorts, and so tons of money, and that's why he can just go grab himself, a little hotsy-totsy, very impressionable 20-year-old chick. And so they have a year where they go out on, touring the world and amassing all this stuff. He's basically, showing off for his bride. And then they come back, and he has built this massive structure, but it was apparently on Indian burial ground. Haven't heard that one before, Stevie K. And so, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I can't necessarily say that the Rose Red project that eventually came to fruition and was his spin on this whole haunted house type approach is something I enjoyed back then. And upon a rewatch today, I can't say that I find it any more compelling. But that is not to say that I'm not intrigued by, that massive backstory that King actually put together for this, because it did have a lot of thought, and it had like this massive marketing campaign where essentially they built a fake website online. It was like BeaumontUniversity.net, and so you could jump on there like it was an actual school paper spot, and because there is that aspect in the storytelling. And they had this whole fake marketing campaign where they even did a 30-minute ABC special, which is the network that the 3-part event aired in January 2002, I believe. Yeah. So it was 3 days straight, one episode, second, third, so on. And so it was one of those mini-series event kind of things that King was becoming more and more known for. And that, I mean, honestly, He wrote Storm of the Century, which was directed by the same guy who did this. I should see, it's Craig something. Craig R. Baxley, who had done some assistant work on like Kojak, The Night Stalker and stuff, but he also directed Storm of the Century. There is a prequel film that comes after the Rose Red miniseries called The Diary of Ellen Rimbauer, and that's, you know, adapting this. Man, they released a fake diary. They had that fake news program acting as if this was all real that I told you that they put together, and that was all leading up to the miniseries. So massive marketing blitz and stuff. But yeah, so Craig R. Baxley, he did a lot of King stuff. He did the aforementioned Storm of the Century. He went on after this to do that prequel, and then also Kingdom Hospital, which I should say I will be reviewing for its, I believe it's its 15th anniversary next year. So I'm going to be doing, that was another one that was about this same era from King, doing things specifically for screen, and I still think Storm of the Century is the absolute best. This Rose Red has its moments, I guess, in Kingdom Hospital as well, but with those very heavily reinterpreting, you know, already done material, it's not like with Salem's Lot where you were drawing a little bit of inspiration and then making Dracula Tale your own. No, this was really, as with, you know, King doing the Lord's One Trigger thing as well, with Kingdom Hospital, I don't know, it just, both of those projects I was never a fan of, and I'm still not, but I'm still impressed by the ambition that they put into constructing this and kind of presenting it through all of these different, you know, from the book that I mentioned, which I've got right here. And so this is the first part in a two-parter where I'll be talking about just the miniseries that I just got done watching, and then in the next few days I'm gonna read this little, it's a very short book, it's like a couple hundred pages, so I'll cruise through that in a couple days and then watch this sequel R-rated film that is presumably, it's directed by the same guy who did the miniseries, and it's 2.5 years later almost that this came out, and I guess it's adapting this? Huh? I don't know. We'll see. So that's what the second episode of this little two-part coverage here on Tales of Stephen King is going to be about. So yeah, that's the lowdown, y'all. Episode 2 will be about the book and the prequel film. But today we're here, obviously, to talk about this one, about a blinger that I just got done watching. It's over 4 hours long, 254 minutes. Whew, boy, yeah. So that's like 4 hours and 14 minutes. Crazy long. Like I said, ambitious in just all of the world building that King did here. You know, the setup for the house and all of the deaths that have taken place there, and just the weird mojo that it's always had. You know, as they say early on, some houses are born evil. They just are, and that's the way. I mean, once again, if you're burying something on the Indian grounds and all that stuff, and there was artifacts and corpses and all this. Okay, anyway, that's a trope that I am just laughing that he decided to use again. So anyway, though, so this comes out in January 2002, and yet it was billed as being this King adaptation through its fake marketing of a real story. They had, like, so it's Dr. Joyce Reardon is the main character, played by Nancy Travis in this, and Nancy Travis was also in, I immediately thought So I Married an Axe Murderer with Mike Myers, but oh goodness, I wrote a couple other things she was, oh yeah, that's right, 3 Men and a Baby, and then also 3 Men and a Little Lady. So, I mean, she did lots of sitcom-y, you know, just kind of sometimes darkly comedic with the So I Married an Axe Murderer stuff and whatnot, but yeah, she is this very driven, this Joyce Reardon, and the fact that they went to that extent to, you know, have like 2 different women playing her, one presumably in real life and then one by Travis in this, but she essentially wants to go into this Rose Red home. That the spot that they filmed this, by the way, y'all, seriously, it was in Lakewood, Washington, and what's the name of the castle? Where's it at? The Thornwood Castle. Yeah, so I guess it's somewhere right by Seattle or just outside or whatever, but yeah, absolutely gorgeous for the exterior shots, breathtaking, truly haunting looking, which is exactly where location scouting is so immensely important. And this is without doubt a good looking miniseries for TV of the era in 2002, where TV still looked very much like TV in comparison with, you know, what you get now, where TV budgets, and I mean, look at everything on most of the pay cable channels, you know, whether it's HBO, Showtime, Amazon Prime stuff, Netflix stuff, it's all film quality, like theater quality in a lot of instances, unless they deliberately don't go for it right now. But yeah, so this looks dated at times, especially with a lot of the visual effects, but the makeup effects are quite good when you actually get some of the spirits and the ghosts and the manifestations, I guess you would call them. And so the problem really for me here is that I love the world building that they did, as I said, but the execution of this mini-series is where I feel like they really fell flat. We have some very stereotypical characters. There's a very Harold type character from The Stand, and boy, I can't even remember his name. It was like Emery or something like that, but yeah, him, but even more so his overbearing mother are two awful characters to endure in this. So before I get ahead of myself though, you know, Dr. Reardon decides that she wants to go and investigate Rose Red, and she's putting together this team, one of which is that obnoxious, sniveling, but yet obviously an intellectual, but just bad attitude a lot of the time. And so I just really hated the almost pathetic manner in which that they wrote him. I mean, they gave him somewhat of an arc, I guess. Joyce definitely has the most interesting arc, and that's where the performance actually comes in pretty solid in this. But she's assembling this team, and so there's aforementioned Emery Kid, there's this British dude who is actually the Warlock, yo! That's right, from both Warlock films, and he did tons of other stuff, though. I know he was on 24. I want to say he was on the season of Dexter, but yeah, he's a hell of an actor, and he really brings and he brings an intriguing edge to this character that in a lot of ways is just kind of flat and boring, but his performance elevates things. So those two actually have an interesting dynamic, which is funny amongst the team members. And then there is a descendant of the Rimbauer clan. It's the great-grandson, and so he's actually going in there with them. He's getting the hookup, scope out the property, and so that's Joyce and him have kind of a thing going. A little weird. But hey, you know, teacher-student, that sort of thing. But yeah, so the other characters are pretty throwaway, at least for me. You know, there's the hottie babe who I know is in Be Cool, and she's been in a few other very smaller pictures, but she is one. She shows early on that there is a possession possibility, and that she can the ghost can speak through her, and they do it with other characters as well. So that's not really giving anything away. But yeah, so she's just really eye candy. Doesn't have a lot of character development, unfortunately. I mean, she's good for the few scenes that give her a little bit of heavy lifting once they get to the Rose Red Mansion. But aside from that, nah. I guess the grandson, his job is pretty decent. The heck is that actor's name? I know I've seen him. Yes, that's right. And excuse me, Matt Kiesler. Boy, I hope I'm not butchering it. I probably am. Anyway, I know I saw him. I know he's one of the actors who was playing an actor in Scream 3, and then he was in this episode called Thirst of Masters of Horror, Mick Garris's thing. So he's in this, and he's like the heartthrobby male lead dude. And so last but not least, well, actually no, there's two other older characters, underdeveloped. One especially is just strange. The older guy. He's got kind of a creeper vibe a little bit. And then the other woman is clenching. She's older and she's clenching to her beliefs and, you know, her Christianity and everything. And she's very one note and one dimensional. Not interesting at all, at least in my estimation. So, I mean, yeah, I guess the male characters in this really shine, with the exception of the actress who plays Joyce, who her arc is crazy and her passion gets kind of scary a little bit. And it's just, I mean, she is obsessed with the history of this house, and she, once they get there, starts leading them through room by room, giving history about, oh, this person was killed here, this, you know, singer, actress, you know, met her demise, and, you know, there's some family stuff. So without spoiling anything or getting too into it, especially if you haven't seen this miniseries from 2002, so boy, it's almost 17 years old now, it's definitely worth watching. I have a lot of King fan friends that are all about this, and they're like, oh, it's a guilty pleasure. I think Josh Pruitt said that, but for me, I just can't say that. Even though it's over 4 hours, I feel like they kind of meandered about midway through, but I felt like the conclusion comes very quickly and isn't particularly satisfying, aside from the fact that there are characters that die in this. So there are stakes, and some of them that do are not ones that you would necessarily expect. So that's something to keep in mind, and that will keep you guessing. And it does add an interesting aspect to still being a very by-the-books, kind of haunted house aspect, except for that cool, you know, that diary aspect and the, you know, just the history of the Rimbauer clan and the property itself. The history of the property, I actually find more compelling than this miniseries and the tropey things of, oh, the first few revelations at night and, you know, the first night that they're sleeping there. And I mean, I'm not really the biggest fan of the haunting, you know, subgenre anyway. It's just not a personal favorite, and perhaps that's why there's certain peeps that I've, you know, shared palaver with, and they're just like, dude, that film is great. What are you talking about? The fact that King started it, and then he got in his accident, and then he had to come back and finish it, and apparently he did some more rewrites then. I'm really curious just how much this project actually changed over all those years, from the first pitch to Spielberg to the finished product that we actually ended up finally getting, you know, on screen and stuff. So I don't know. It's bloated. It's got interesting bonus content. I'm not sure if it's rentable through any of the streaming or VOD sites or anything like that. But I do know that you know, if you track down the DVD, which you can probably find on eBay for 10, maybe 15 bucks. I don't know if this one is out of print or not. Probably is, but I didn't have to spend too much. Great bonus features. You have that ABC special that I mentioned. It's got a full commentary track. It's got the making of. I mean, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really interesting things here. I just don't really find the story particularly interesting, and you're going to see a lot of the same beats that you have before. Although I must say, some of the favorites for me, at least, were when just how nastily this Emery kid was harassed, and he's kind of a creepy spaz himself in a lot of ways, but yeah, he's seeing some of the dead residents. And I'll just say it, they're female residents, and, you know, I'm your girlfriend now, and stuff like that. It's cheese, and it's similar to what I've seen before, but I felt like it was effectively done, and it looked cool. As I said, that the ghostly effects that were digital, that were like CG and stuff, they look like crap. They really seriously do, and they pull you out of it and make it feel very dated. But when they went for practical, all of the makeup and some of the gore effects and things like that, it was effective. It looked pretty damn good, at least in my estimation. It's just the way they did the sagging skin on the faces and stuff. It was very EC Comics at times, especially in the finale aspect and the demise of certain characters and whatnot. It was very. There's one in particular that for me was extremely satisfying, just massively, significantly satisfying. And I will not mention or even imply who that was. I'm trying to make sure that I've hit most of the beats, because really, it's as simple as that. Paranormal investigative team, you know, from a college, you know, get together and they have some silly, very TV-esque bonding scenes drinking, and then, you know, they go. And I guess the wild card here is the fact that they bring in, it's supposedly a dormant, you know, place, and, you know, there's no spark left there. But it seems like she's very open, this Dr. Joyce, about the fact that, you know, she is trying to at least get a little flicker, because she is determined to prove, you know, that paranormal science is valid and give it credibility and all these other things and stuff. And she gets her point across very well, you know, both in the fake-umentary and also the actress portrayal. But yeah, that's really one of the best aspects of this, because everything else is just kind of meh, at least for me. So I don't know, worth checking out. It even says on the back here, you know, Los Angeles Times, Stephen King creates the ultimate haunted abode. I know a decent amount of people liked it. It was viewed by almost 19 million people each night. It was like 18 and a half or something, those 3 nights that it was broadcasting. So it was a successful event series for King, and interestingly enough, you know, another just shot at him trying to do something specifically for the screen. Whereas with Storm of the Century, which of the 3 that we've been discussing this whole time, once again, I will double down that is my personal favorites of the direct-for-screen projects. I guess Golden Years was another one, but I'm eventually going to get to reviewing that as well, I think sometime in the year of 19, which is what we are approaching very, very quickly. And yeah, so just to double down, next things that I am doing for part 2 of the Rose Red's coverage is going to be, yes, the Diary of Ellen Rimbauer, My Life at Rose Red. It even says on here, edited by Joyce Reardon, PhD, with an afterword by Stephen Rimbauer, who is the kid in this, and so the kid who goes into the property with them, the great-grandson and everything. So yeah, and then after reading this, I will be doing Prepare to Get Very Creeped Out, says The Hollywood Reporter, for the Diary of Ellen Rimbauer, and I would imagine that this has not been seen as significantly. It's also directed by Craig R. Baxley, and he even has those teleplay by Ridley Pearson, and Ridley Pearson is the name of the author who actually was commissioned to write this, that from what I have seen, apparently it's going to be all the stuff from that honeymoon and the years afterwards where she starts to realize, oh, he's unfaithful and all this other stuff. And so, yeah, I'm intrigued because it's going to talk about the Africa trip. It's going to talk, it's basically, this is going to break down all of the, well, I hear there's strange sexual stuff in here. We'll see how far they go with that. But there's also some brutal deaths and just the way she describes those things. So I'm very curious about this because I have actually, guys, I have never read this before. I've just watched both of the movies because, I don't know, the reason I ignored it was because since I knew King didn't write it, I was like, is it really worth my time? But I must say, I'm more intrigued in that lore after this viewing than I was the first time watching Rose Red. I didn't like the miniseries very much. You know, it's very tropey with the character interactions. As I said, you know, 3 of our 4 males are all very solid and very good. The Brit, even sniveling Emery, and then obviously, you know, Stephen, the great-grandson. I felt like the 3 of them were all quite good, and then once again, Dr. Joyce, but everybody else is pretty throwaway. Not very interesting, and the film, unfortunately, or the telefilm, fails more than it succeeds, regrettably, but you may think otherwise. You may be endeared by the charms that it has more so than me, but yeah, so there's that. Next is this and the prequel film, which I'm very, very stoked to be doing, y'all. So what are your thoughts about Rose Red, just the amount of effort in just building this huge, just, I don't know, King constructed a lot, and a lot of effort was put into this, and especially with all the iterations and all the forms of media that the story took to. So that's kind of interesting. So next up, guys, I have a big surprise and something that I have been sitting on for a few days until I was going to be able to actually, you know, film the next Halo episode. Also, gracias, by the way, to everybody who tuned in and checked out my review from the Horror Show Studios of the Joe Hill book, 20th Century Ghosts. It's up here on the channel right now. I have already filmed my review for The Fireman, and Cecil and I are about to do a Christmas-themed review of both Wraith and Nosferatu, so stay tuned for those as well. Yes, occasionally, at least here and there, maybe I've been thinking more and more about just shifting in more of this Joe Hill coverage as I speed through it. But I got a special delivery from a Hail to Stephen King Facebook grouper. Shout out to Garrett Kirby from Ohio. Dude is an awesome newer addition to the Hail to Stephen King Facebook group that if y'all have any interest in joining up with, I am the moderator and sole administrator on there, and all that I ask is that we keep it Side King. We do Tower Tuesdays, we do Pennywise Wednesdays. I'm trying to think of something for the weekend, you know, on a Saturday or a Sunday that is going to be of note for recurring content, but we shall see. But I do this show every Terrifying Tuesday and Scarific Saturday, and just constant week-long palaver on the Facebook group, but that's where Garrett is from, and so he sent me something, and I just have to say your insights and just hearing about your path, you know, along the beam, man, has been very cool, and you've been an awesome addition to the group. So I am humbled and honored anytime somebody wants to send something like this to me, because it is not asked for or necessary. I am just here to be passionate about this guy, but, you know, I will be very accepting and extremely appreciative and see what Garrett's got in here. What we got, yo? What we got? What we got? It is a book of some sort. Damn Rizzle. Very, very exciting. Awesome. So, this is a book called Down with the Fallen, a post-apocalyptic horror anthology. And if I'm not mistaken, he has, yep, Garrett Kirby, friend of the show, has a story in this. And yeah, now here's what we got on the back, y'all. One day, the world as we know it will end. Will it become a place of stark divisions where the lower class's best hope is a quick death? Or a world infested with the undead? Maybe the end will come quietly at our own hands, or as a crack in the earth's very surface, or at the hand of an alien race hell-bent on our destruction? Will a hero be there to save us, or will they be the end of us? Do you really want to know? That's cool. I like it. And I really dig post-apocalyptic stuff, whether it's The Road, whether it's The Stand. I mean, whatever, man. Mad Max, yeah, these are dope. So I had promised Garrett that we were going to do a review of his story in here. And let's see what his story is called. Thank you so very much, man. I am very, very excited to get a look at his story called The Other, which is in this. And if any of you have interest in the story, I will obviously be talking a little bit further about it, but I am so supremely excited, homeboy, and thank you so very much. Shout out to Garrett Kirby, and once again, this is called Down with the Fallen. I know it's on Amazon if you have any interest in a horror anthology with a contribution from one of our own, y'all. So I extend a grande gracias definitely to Kirby for the awesome gift, man. Thank you so very much. Say thank you. And yes, you can find me on all social media sectors. Jaime and Fuego, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and a Patreon launching next year. Very excited and humbled just to, you know, see what sort of additional things I can put together and make my own content just a tad more ambitious with possibilities there, which is pretty cool. So more importantly though, you have to make sure to subscribe to the horror show here if you're just stumbling upon this video, because yes, we do this stuff 2 to 3 times a day. It's way beyond me on Tuesdays and Saturdays here. Yeah guys, we do trailer reactions, we do film reviews, we do tons of convention coverage, we did all of these spooky walkthroughs at the Halloween Horror Nights in Hollywood this past year. I sadly was not a part of that because I was playing a show with my metal band Chiron, which Chiron band AZ on Reverb Nation if anybody's interested. But yeah, so I mean, we are truly a horror variety show, and there's a lot of other horror YouTubers out there. We don't consider ourselves the best, merely the most prolific, hopefully. So that's what we aspire for. And yes, I always aspire to put together the most radtastic content here on Hail to Stephen King. Just a reminder, on the last episode of the month, I am going to be doing a full live spoilers discussion all about The Stand, which celebrated its 40th anniversary this year. Very excitingly, it's in my top 3. It's in the unholy King Trinity, at least for me, along with it and Pet Sematary. So yes, with the 40th anniversary winding down, there's also going to be a specific episode about the Stand comic and you know, something about the miniseries. And yeah, it's going to be fun. So all that stuff is coming up very soon, and I'm very much looking forward to the next time that we get to see one another once again, y'all. So hasta luego, sin amigos. Hopeful that it is sooner rather than later. Say thank you once again, and until that encounter happens, remember, stay scared and read Stephen King. Well, this is also about watching Stephen King sometimes.